And a lot of art in the last 50 years is a critique of consumption. But I'm much more interested in how and why things are produced and who controls that process. I used to often ask people when I arrived somewhere, I'd say, where is the local glitter factory? But no one could tell me. They could tell me where the factory was for cars or for televisions or for anything else. But I'm interested in these kind of strange zones that you find at the edge of cities, and you find them all over the world. A strange combination of things starts to appear at the edge. So sometimes a big warehouse or storage place, small factories, places to buy food in in large amounts, or some kind of supplies, sometimes even a restaurant or a nightclub. And I was looking at one of these in France, in the south of France. Suddenly I came across this building that said on it, the Institute for the Regulation of Automation. And I found this very interesting, that I like this fantasy that everything in the world that's a working place is all organized from this small building in the south of France. Automated, from your car to the air conditioning system to a factory. And then I started to turn it around and think, well, what if it was the Institute for the Automation of Regulations? So it was actually a place that made all regulations automatic. Or what if actually there were just better institutes that were not this kind of dry concept, but something much more dynamic or more humane, or less dry, less boring. So this was kind of what I was holding in my head, and it seemed particularly interesting for this context here to think about, to use this as a kind of starting point, this circular paradox that, especially in this city or even this country, that these questions about automation, regulation, and so on, these are big questions, right? Somehow the glitter for me is like a last remaining kind of, it's like almost like a kind of alchemical deceit in a way. It's like something that gives value but has no value, or something like that. I find it a very powerful material. And here it's sprinkled on top of a table tennis table, which is an early work from the 90s. Which was really an attempt to claim back or disrupt the procedure of where leisure and work started to become completely merged in the 90s. You don't know how much leisure you're having, you don't know how much work you're doing, you even become a project for yourself. The new kind of factory spaces, new office spaces start to bring in these things into the workplace. I'm trying to kind of cast a spell on that process and talk about the future and talk about the idea of parallel futures that could be different. My abstract artworks, they spring from an interest in the kind of secondary architecture of the smooth spaces that surround us. And I'm drawing upon these kind of interfaces, consoles, cooling systems, control systems that you find in contemporary architecture, for example, and also contemporary spaces. On some level, what's happening in the mirroring here is it's a simple exercise of one side of the reflection is showing you more of the form, and the other side is confusing the form. It's a kind of perceptual visual game. The white works in the show they reveal their form much more clearly, but on another level that kind of emptied literally of content. Nothing in the exhibition is accurate. There are mirrors going in different directions, from wall to wall, from side to side. There's circles and mirrors, reflections and rotations. Quite a long time ago now, I started to collect like a digital archive of medieval woodcuts. Woodcuts in the 14th, 15th, and 16th century tend to be done by, they're not authored, there's no author for them. And they also, because of the nature of the process, are quite flat. They have no perspective, or very little perspective. There are clear contradictions in the work. I've always recognized I've allowed to become more visible, which are to do with another voice. Like, you can ask someone how many voices are in their head. And when I'm working, there are more than one. There's a couple of different voices. I'm interested in the problem of what art could be, not putting lots of writing in a show. Somehow, these text elements and the graphic elements of the Tom Thumb's mother, they kind of perform the role of that other voice in your head that's saying, this is not possible, or I question this, or like a visitor, bringing another idea, another kind of critical presence. And I used to suppress that, but now I kind of accept that there are these two distinct strands in the work, one of which is commenting on the other. As over time I started to look for other woodcuts and other sources, and I discovered that in the 17th century, so later than these early woodcuts, there were cheap books produced, very small, often like this big. These books were really sold in the street. People would walk from village to village with a basket and sell these tiny books. And they would sometimes be a moral tale, they'd be a fairy tale, they'd be something like a Bible story. And this would be a way that people who were beginning to become literate could have, start to collect stories. Oral tradition turns into a written tradition. And these books, there's no artist in this case. There's a kind of a person creating an image for a book. And I find this a very modern idea. The key to the story is the mother, because she accepts this child even though it's the size of a thumb, and treats the child and cares for them. It doesn't matter what they are or who they are. It's a strange kind of reminder of a certain kind of unconditional situation. And I kind of like this idea that she's conjuring or building abstraction. She's not making it herself, but in the images on the wall, there's an abstract image floating above her hand. I like this idea that part of her magic or her ability is to produce this thing that cannot be described. So any abstract artwork is an admission that you cannot make something that's truly abstract. It's an attempt to reach something that can never be reached. Something that was truly abstract could never find a real form. It would remain just beyond, just outside of what could be understood or seen or felt. So I need to bring some magic into the exhibition in a way to show that behind this kind of rational thinking, or behind this kind of attempt to create rational form, there is also this kind of irrational. I treated the place as a place for art. I didn't think about it as a commercial environment or a mercantile place, or even a place to just show new work or something that simple. I viewed the exhibition as a whole, but I don't see things as a simple whole, ever. I see things in these kind of combination of circling ideas, fragmented ideas, mirroring, reflecting, contradicting, operating in between spaces. I was struggling with the title. I couldn't think of what to call it. And I realized I had to talk about my condition, or the condition of the exhibition, not what is in it. And I realized that what I'm trying to get to, or what I'm trying to talk about, maybe the answer is in philosophy. And so I was drawn to, there's quite a lot of talk about knots in philosophy because they're an interesting idea. And I found this quote from Alain Badiou, the French philosopher. When he was trying to talk about a certain approach to philosophy, he said, "The knot of which I speak cannot be knotted." And that's exactly what's happening in the exhibition. I'm trying to talk about something that can't be done, but I'm talking about it anyway. For something not to be, that cannot be knotted, but you can still talk about it.